got a simple question. So, what do you think your character Kraglin was doing during the events of Avengers Infinity War?
Well, I more or less know the answer to that, so I can't answer. I think that, I can't say anything about the next Avengers movie. I worked on it a great deal as Rocket. I can't make any sort of comments about Kraglin other than to say that I think we'll find out what a lot of the members of the MCU were doing that we didn't get to see.
All right. Thank you for answering.
Hi, my question actually is, I know you were on Gilmore Girls all 7 seasons. Huge fan, by the way.
Thank you.
Do you have any funny behind the scenes stories that you just adore telling or anything like that you?
From Gilmore Girls?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Probably too many, actually.
Most of my favorite memories from Gilmore Girls were the nights we shot very long hours on Gilmore Girls because there was so much dialogue. We would go very late into the day a lot. And particularly as the week went on, we knew we were running out of time more and more to get our whole weekend. So a lot of times on Thursday and Friday nights, we'd end up with these marathon, we'd be shooting till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And those are a lot of my favorite memories, are the scenes in the town hall meetings, because everybody would be there. There'd be so many people on set,
Right.
and we'd be working late in the evenings. And at some point, Liz Torres and Sally Struthers would start breaking into song, and I think everybody would start to get a little loopy. And those are kind of my favorite moments from that set. But that set was notable for not having a lot of we didn't have a lot of time to mess around.
Right.
Because it was always so hard to get our days. So we were pretty serious on that set. But I love all those people a great deal.
Awesome. Thank you for answering my question.
Sure.
Okay. One, congrats on your engagement.
Oh, thank you.
Very excited for you.
Yes, I'm excited to be engaged. It's nice.
I'd like to know that feeling one day. Do you think if they wanted to do another revival, would you be in for it for Gilmore Girls?
I'll always answer the phone when Amy Palladino calls. I can't imagine that would happen anytime soon.
Right.
They're pretty into their show on Amazon, which if you haven't seen it, it's great. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is awesome, and I know that a lot of the other people from Gilmore Girls are kind of busy doing their other things now. But the way content is now, who knows? You never say never. Maybe down the road we can all find a way to get back together again. But as I said, if they work it out, they can always call me. But I never know.
I like the hope, at least.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So before doing Guardians of the Galaxy, did you read the comics, or was that something you were big into, or is that just something you kind of fell into for?
Yeah, I was never. My brother James was really into comics, and still is, and kind of read everything. So I would get some trickle down information from him, but I never read a lot of comic books. I appreciate them, okay, a few here and there, a few of the more famous titles, but I was not really a comic book guy. So I came into Guardians definitely with a clean slate of what I was expecting, which in some ways I think for Guardians was good because we didn't draw a whole lot from the comic books. There was some overlap of some certain things, but for the most part, we were kind of forging a new path for the Guardians, I think, in the movies.
Thank you.
So talk a little about your process of being Rocket and how the mocap thing happened for you. Had you done that before? Is that new to you?
No, I had never done it. The idea there was that my brother really wanted somebody he trusted to play Rocket on set, and we knew that we were going to have to try to create this character to make it seem believable. But the actor who was doing the voice wasn't even cast when we started the first movie. And Bradley Cooper didn't end up being cast until the first movie was almost totally shot. So I was hired to sort of be assistant playing Rocket on set, and we didn't know how we were going to do it. So I did the first table read, and I read as Rocket, and then when we did our first rehearsal, I actually just got down on my hands and knees, basically, and got my face to where Rocket's face would be, and started playing the scenes like that. And oddly, we found that after you got over the initial weirdness of it, that it was the best way to go about doing it. And the other thing we found was that, so we'd have these dailies of me in there, and it was really helpful for the other actors, because they wouldn't be looking at a blank space or at a tennis ball or on a stick or something like that. They'd be looking at an actual actor's face. And when they were looking at eyes, they'd be looking into eyes. And so we started to do the scenes like that. And then we found that the visual effects team really appreciated it, because because creating Rocket was really tricky. And they don't do it through an algorithm. That's why it's not exactly motion capture. It's actually called motion reference. Because motion capture would be, I'd have a bunch of little lighted balls on me, and they would do it through a computer algorithm. But we don't do that because it would look fake. It's not, the technology is not there to turn a human face into a raccoon's face. So the animators have to do it more sort of old school by hand. So they're really just looking at a reference and then animating that to the best of their ability. But it was really helpful to them to have a face that was doing what they needed to so they knew what the face was should be doing, what sorts of faces it would be making, where the eyes would be looking, what the hands were doing, and all that kind of thing. And so we just we decided not to mess with it. It was a really successful, and then eventually Bradley was cast and came in and did the voice for the first movie. And I think Marvel was really happy with it. My brother was really happy with it, and it seemed like this sort of complete character, even though it's a bunch of different people, who go into making it. And so we just didn't mess with it. For the second movie, we did even more. They wanted even more reference shots than they had for the first. And then the same with, I had done 2 movies like that, and then at Comic-Con in San Diego a couple of years ago, Kevin Feige took me aside at a Marvel event and said, hey, we really need you to do Rocket for the Infinity War movies that are coming up, and we'd love you to do it. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. I was kind of surprised by it, but then I ended up doing it for both, and Rocket has a lot of fun things to do in the next Avengers movie as well. So it's sort of been this job that I never would have guessed that I would have fallen. It's funny, Gilmore Girls is the same way. But it's sort of this job that I never would have guessed my career was going in that direction. And now I've done 4 movies as Rocket. So it's been a long, strange trip.
There's nobody behind me, so I'm just going to keep asking questions.
Sure, go for it.
Somebody else wants to ask a question. Were there any funny stories from Infinity War with
None.
Chris Hemsworth? Because the scenes of him calling you Rabbit were precious.
I loved working with Chris Hemsworth, and he was very helpful to me because I think when he first heard that he had a bunch of scenes with Rocket, he didn't want to do it. From what I understand, at first he's like, I don't know, mate, I don't want to be doing talking to the tennis ball. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, you got to see, we got a guy who actually does it on set. And so he was like at first he was like, he saw me actually doing it, and he was like, wow. But then he sort of told everybody else. So as I worked with some of the new people who I'd never worked with before, he would sort of prep them and say, it's going to be very weird for a minute, but you'll get used to it.
do you think that Yondu's sacrifice in Volume 2 was worth it, considering that he sacrificed himself to save Quill, and then the next movie, Quill made a decision that costed the lives of half the universe?
I think that's a question for you, and not a question for me. I let the audiences decide that. I think that I think that Yondu made a noble sacrifice, regardless of what happens in the next Avengers movie. But hopefully we'll see if there's ever some chance that Quill could possibly redeem himself from that horrible mistake. I don't know.
Hello. In Guardians, your character, the way he talked, his accent and stuff, was that based off of anybody you knew, or did you just make that up?
No, you know, my brother wanted the character to have a little bit of you know, a southern or a country dialect a little bit, because Rooker does, and he wanted it to be sort of consistent with Michael's character, and so I did something I've done many times, which is I just sort of listened to some dialect tapes of you know, that I've been doing it for a long time. So I listened to like some Tennessee tapes and just try to get and I grew up in Missouri, so it's somewhere in me anyway, I think, and just try to sort of start talking with that in my brain.
So
and,
he's not from Kentucky. That character.
you know, it's very close, I would say. I would say it's very close, and if you'd like to imagine that Kraglin is from Kentucky, you're welcome to do so. Although he's actually from Xandar, so I don't know why they have there must be a section of Xandar where they have something approaching a Kentucky dialect.
Maybe.
So
Yeah, maybe.
It's right on the border.
yeah.
Maybe.
Did you ever accidentally do that accent when you were doing Rocket?
Accidentally, no, I don't think I did. But there were days when I would be playing both characters. You know, Rocket and Kraglin have 4 scenes together in the second movie, so those days were.
That's got to be crazy to flip back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah, they are. And then I like would have to go in and out of my wardrobe, because in the Kraglin wardrobe is stiff enough that I can't then get as low as I need to get to play Rocket. So I would have to get in and out of wardrobe a little bit. Those are tricky days. Like it was something that I was like, oh, I'll be fine. I'll be able to do it. I'm always such a soldier about shooting things, I think. But it was hard. You got to really like visualize. I always say that acting is really just, you know, it's mostly preparation and focus. And so on those days when I'm playing 2 characters, it's just that much more preparation and that much more focus, you know.
It's really crazy. So what kinds of things did you wear as Rocket? Because I would think that it would get very uncomfortable being on the floor for a long time.
Yeah, I love my Rocket. My Rocket outfit is really just a gray tracksuit.
Yeah.
In the first movie, you'll see some still frames of me wearing like the blue or the green, you know, onesie basically. But fortunately, I graduated from that, and in the second movie, and then in the 2 subsequent Avengers movies, I'm just wearing a comfortable tracksuit. That the wardrobe people were very kind to knit a little Rocket patch,
Oh, cool.
which I really appreciate. I stole 1 set of those.
That's awesome.
Going back to your Gilmore Girls, I have to thank my wife for introducing me to it. I've never really seen it until she made me watch it, and I just always found myself just laughing so much because the writing was just so funny. The episode where you are doing the living art and you're playing Jesus Christ in the Last Supper was particularly funny for me. I'm the son of a preacher, so I about split my ribs laughing.
I hope you didn't find it overly
No.
sacrilegious.
Question though is just every town, every small town, I'm from small towns too, has a Kirk-like character person in them. Was there ever a person that you thought back as you're playing Kirk, wow, this makes me think of Mr. So-and-so who would be doing some unusual thing? And
Well, are you the Kirk-like character in your town?
not that I know of, no.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I would say that more than real people, I tend to borrow things from other actors, you know, more than anything. Like there's some old time actors, definitely Buster Keaton, an old comic actor named Eddie Bracken, who I tend to steal things from them more than I do from real life. But I don't know where that character, like it seems so obvious from the page, but I don't know really where he came from. And I think it's just, he's definitely a singular sort of character. He's like a man-child, you know. He's like a grown-up who thinks the way that like an 11-year-old thinks. But that was never expressed. We never talked about that out loud. It's just Amy wrote the words and then I performed them the way that seemed right, and somewhere we ended up creating this bizarre character that people enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I was going to ask, they always say there's nothing new under the sun and everything, but I look back in recent cinematic history, and there really hasn't been, to my recollection, just a group of movies that have worked in tandem as much as the Marvel movies have in recent years. And I just want to say, compared to your other acting and your other jobs, is it different to be in something that is so large and so involved in so many movies that all just interconnect with each other? Is it just kind of different from other jobs?
Yeah, well, what's the thing that's unique about it is the idea that it's almost like being part of in some ways it's almost more like being part of a TV series than a series of movies, because you have this open-ended history. You know, I remember when I first started acting professionally in the late 90s, I kind of, I always knew I'd go where the work is. But there was something a little more enticing to me about TV, because I like the idea of playing a character whose history was open-ended, who would grow as the material grew. And then I was able to do that for a lot of years. And so then it was interesting to then be a part of a film franchise where, oh, my character's not gone forever. I always sort of thought that if I did movies, you go from one movie to the next and play all these different characters. And now it's like almost everything is a franchise, almost all, I heard my brother say recently that now the IP is the movie stars. The IP being the intellectual property is the star in the way that the actors used to be the stars, in the older days of Hollywood. So I think that I don't know that Marvel really revolutionized that, but I think they really did. They have been at least performing that at about as well as it could be done, in the last decade. And I think that it wasn't a brand new template, but man, they've really maxed out what you can do with it. And I think that more, you'll see more worlds like that. I don't think it'll remain so unique. I would guess in another 2 decades, you would still have these handfuls of different story worlds, that are out there that people can create different stories for each one,
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet the late, great Stan Lee, either on set or elsewhere? And if
I
so,
did. I knew Stan a little bit, and I actually roasted him on stage at the Marvelous Nerd Year's Eve in Dallas, which is a year ago, about a year, almost 2 years ago, over New Year's. And I also met Stan on set a couple of times. And my brother James knew Stan pretty well from his years in working with him. And so we had a lot of mutual friends. I didn't know him as well as many other people who wrote great things about him, but I can say that everything that I knew about him was consistent with all the great things you've heard about him from everybody. He was a truly a generous, he's a generous guy and a generous spirited guy who really, I think, wanted to give as much to his fans as he possibly could. And that's very, that's something to really strive for and to celebrate.
Changing gears a little bit, is there any fun behind-the-scenes stories from Super? Any pranks pulled?
Super. Super is an indie film with Rainn Wilson and Ellen Page and Kevin Bacon and Liv Tyler that my brother James wrote and directed. I'm proud of Super. Super was mostly just it was a real grind. You know, it was one of those, it was pretty low budget indie movie. I think we shot 18 days, something like that, not many more. So that was in Shreveport. It was real cold. It was funny, we went down, we were shooting in December, and we were hoping that if we went a little south, it wouldn't be quite so cold, and yet it was like 15 degrees in Shreveport, and it was freezing. Honestly, I'm proud of that movie, but the most notable thing about the shooting of it was that it was very difficult, and I know that it was hard to get everything that needed to be gotten. It was there was a lot. It was it was one of those fun, hard indie shoots. That's how it is with those movies.
Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? We can call it. I'm good. I need a martini. How much did Disney screw up Guardians 3? I think we'll have to let future people make that kind of decision. I mean, someone asked me today about it, and I said, and I mean this sincerely, that I'm not in the business of trying to decide what a multi-billion-dollar company is supposed to do in a given situation, or to even criticize them for any of the actions that they take. But I think there are certainly things about it that were unfortunate, and it is what it is, and time will figure it out one way or another, But I definitely think that everybody deserves a measured and considered objective look at the timeline of sort of what happens when people are jumped on for things that they did. What we need is more nuance, not less. We need people actually looking at what happened and not jumping to conclusions or to outrage, There's no word on that right now. I believe that there's every intention to use my brother's script. It doesn't mean they are. It just means I haven't heard otherwise. The movie, is certainly on hold for a little bit, but I don't know for how long. And I'm hopeful that, for the sake of the fans, I'm hopeful that it's going to get made here, at some point. Yeah. Ask me that question again in 6 months.
And speaking of Disney, so I hear that at Disneyland there's a Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Have you been on this, or
Yes.
are you in it? Or
Yeah,
both?
well, I worked on it because they needed just like in the movies, they needed a rocket when we shot that portion of the day. The old Tower of Terror ride became Guardians of the Galaxy Breakout, and it's really fun. I actually wasn't there when we shot I was working on Avengers when they had the opening of the ride, so I wasn't there for opening day, but I got there like a week or two later. It's fun. You should go on it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, were you?
Cool.
It's fun, right? Yeah, what do you think?
Do you have any idea if, or can you say if James Gunn wants to try to get you and Michael Rooker into Suicide Squad 2?
I have no knowledge of that one way or the other. We'll see. I don't know yet if my brother's going to direct Suicide Squad, but I think we'll probably know pretty soon whether or not he's going to direct it. He's definitely writing it, and I know he's very excited about it. We've talked about it, and he's pretty into his script that he's working on.
At the end of Guardians 1, Peter obtained the Awesome Mix Volume 2 that he received from his mother years ago. And then in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, he received the Zune from Kraglin. Do you think that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 will be titled Guardians of the Galaxy MP3?
That's a pretty good idea, man. I like this guy's questions. I don't think it will be, unfortunately, but that's pretty good.
So you talked about it with Gilmore Girls being hard days, a lot of long days. With Guardians, one of the best things that I've loved about it is how fun the movies are, especially like even in the comics and then the movies. From being on screen with all those, all the great actors that are part of that, was that also a really fun thing to shoot, or was that also? I mean, I just from like watching the movies, it was great. So I was just curious how that actually felt when you guys were shooting everything.
For the most part, though, it's a really good time shooting. I mean, it's a really my brother does a very good job of vetting human beings as well as actors. So those actors are not only good at what they do, they're also really good people. And I'll get in the trenches with Chris and Zoe and Dave and Pom and Karen and not Rooker, but no, and Rooker, and at any time I would be happy to be with them day in and day out, trying to be creative and make a movie. Everybody's heart is in the right place, and yeah, and it's not nearly as hard to make a big budget movie as it is like a TV show, because you're not as, yes, you're on schedule, and yes, days can be long and hard, but you're not as panicked if you don't make your day, whereas in TV, you've got to, you have to, or you're dead. Yeah, it was a great experience. And then going and doing Avengers was like even so much, that was just bananas, because that's in like every big movie star in Hollywood everywhere you turn, which was pretty crazy.
Awesome, thanks.
Hey, you are just amazing at creating very unique, different kinds of characters. Is there any?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there one that you've seen? You're like, I wish I would have done that.
There's definitely roles that I auditioned for that I'm like, that would have been nice to have gotten that one. And every actor has those stories, and it's not good form to talk about what they are. There's no massive ones really, but no, there's a couple bigger roles I didn't get. But I do like the fact that I feel like, the characters, the two characters that I'm best known for, Kirk and Kraglin, and then some of the more recent characters I played, like in Belko Experiment or in a few other things, the characters are pretty different. And I like that. I really am hoping that as my career goes on, I continue to play characters where, I like it when people see me for a few seconds before they realize, oh wait, that's that same guy. That's a good feeling to me. And so I hope I keep getting to do that. I'd love to play like more of a bad guy, but I'm going to do a movie. The next project I'm going to do is a film where I play a character who's a little bit more of a regular dude, which I haven't done a whole lot of that, oddly enough. I'm definitely a character actor, and I tend to play characters that are sort of outliers. And so this next thing I'm doing is pretty grounded in drama and pretty much a normal guy, and so I'm very actually excited to do that. But I love not knowing what's next.
Great. Well, just so you know, my husband and I look for your name before when we look at something, and if you're there, we'll go see it.
I love it. Thank you.
Hi. We were lucky enough to see Michael walking around the booths upstairs, and he bought a particular item at a leather shop, and we were wanting to know if you got it.
He bought it for me? He bought me
He bought it specifically for you.
Wow. No, but
I don't want to
now
spoil
I can't
it.
wait. Sounds delightful.
My goodness.
It's a really
leather item of
interesting
some kind.
item.
Ooh.
Should I tell him what it is? It's pretty funny. I
Don't
won't ruin
spoil
it.
it. Yeah.
It sounds like we're about to get a lot closer. I don't.
It's very interesting.
I feel like you
All
should do
right.
another panel about whatever
Yeah,
this gift
I know.
is going
Now
to be.
I can't wait to see what this is. It's going to be great.
So where should everyone look for you next? Besides
well,
some
I'm
leather
going
convention.
as I said, I'm going to do a movie very shortly in a couple of months that I probably shouldn't talk. I probably shouldn't announce anything yet. But it's a like sort of smallish. It's kind of like a horror. It's sort of like a grounded horror movie that I like, that I think is good. I'm a big fan of the script. Yeah, things got thrown off a little bit because when Guardians 3 got postponed, I went from having like I'd been turning down work because I had work set up. And so then when that got postponed, everything sort of was thrown into chaos a little bit, and then I had a massive hole in my schedule where there wasn't one. So yeah, no, I'm glad I'm going to do another movie, and then I'm going to keep, I'm out there. So I'm, Fi Diddly D, the actor's life for me.
That's great. And great, we'll take one more question.
Is there anybody that you've never worked with that you would love to work with?
Oh, there's so many. I don't even, God, where would I start with that? Some of my favorite directors, I love Alfonso Cuarón. I love some new directors I've seen, but mostly for me, I think it's actors. I think my cup runneth over now with the number of great actors that I've been on set with and that I've worked with, and which I'll be able to talk about more after the next Avengers movie, because you'll see a bunch of new ones. I don't know who I would single out, but I mean, anybody whose work I admire. I'm very lucky to have worked with so many great people, and so I always look forward to whoever is next. Thanks.